Okies were refugee farm families from the southern plains who migrated to California in the 1930s to escape the ruin of the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. Okies were not migrants from one sole state. In fact, they came from several states such as Kansas, Colorado, and New Mexico. But Okies mainly came from impoverished parts of Oklahoma.
Okies were escaping two distinct, although simultaneous and bordering catastrophes, one economic, one environmental. Environmentally, farmers suffered greatly due to conditions in the Dust Bowl. Others suffered from the collapse of the economy, but most suffered from both. In 1931, the Great Plains entered a decade-long drought. People's farms began to blow away in spectacular dust storms. Families suffered drought, wind, dust, and death from dust pneumonia for half a decade before the horrific dust storms and heat of 1935 to 1936. The storms forced many to abandon their homes and search for a new life in the Golden State. The Dust Bowl exodus reduced the populations of Texas and Oklahoma Panhandle counties by as much as 1/4 and killed or stunted numerous towns' growth. The images of the refugees' hungry, gaunt families riding overloaded jalopies over lonely Route 66 remains vivid in the American collective memory.
The families packed their belongings and set out on a journey of 3 days or more down Route 66 to a supposedly better life in the far west. This migration began in earnest in 1935 and peaked between 1937 and 1938. When the migrants got to Barstow, California, they had to decide whether to follow Highway 66 into Los Angeles or turn north toward California's central agricultural valleys. Some 38% of the southwestern migrants chose Los Angeles. They did not find a warm reception. Briefly in 1936, the Los Angeles police established a bum blockade at the California borders to keep out undesirables. The new residents who had skills might find a job with reasonable pay. Others lived with friends or after a year's waiting period went on relief. Okies quickly blended in and became part of the city's largely Anglo population in the 1930s.
Predominantly upland Southerners, the 500,000 Okies met new hardships in California, where they were unwelcome aliens, forced to live in squatter camps and to compete for scarce jobs as agricultural migrant laborers. They displaced Mexican workers, but despite the initial fears of landowners that they would demand better working conditions, these conservative, self-reliant, and preserving folk proved even easier to exploit. With many more willing hands than jobs, wage rates dropped. Crowded, filthy squatter camps rose up along the roads and streams of the San Joaquin Valley, leading Californians to attribute to the scene of the refugees' own regionally derived ignorance and sloth. Federal relief in the form of labor camps, such as Steinbach's wheat patch, dubbed Little Oklahomas, were hardly effective.
Genuine relief for the Okies arrived in 1940, when federal defense dollars inflated West Coast industries. In fact, while the squatter camps disappeared, the number of people coming to California from the southern plains actually increased in the 1940s. These defense Okies poured into Los Angeles and Orange County during the war years and continued to take jobs in the state's aeronautical, petroleum, and automotive industries in the 1950s.
The Okie migration brought the dialects, denominations, politics, and attitudes of the southern plains to California, where they persist in places like Bakersfield. Although the Okie experience is best described in Steinbeck's works, it also affected popular culture in diverse musical genres, including the ballads of social radical Woody Guthrie, which inspired urban folk and rock music, as well as infusions in the country music in the sound of Buck Owens, and the melancholy, oppressed yet patriotic ballads of Merle Haggard. Separated by ideology and a generation, both Guthrie and Haggard painted in their lyrics the imagery of a cruel, decadent California and a righteous, nostalgic Oklahoma. That image lasts in the regional meanings of Okie, a California insult, and an endearing nickname in the southern Great Plains.